Hello, friend. Welcome back to Hey Wait. You're listening to this podcast because you know that you deserve to be related to, or you're opening up to the awareness that you deserve to be related to, and you want to increase your skills for how to have more self-respect and more realness in your relationships. And if you're like most people in the pursuit of more self-respect and realness, you probably have a hard conversation you know you need to have right now. And you probably have really good reasons for avoiding that conversation. But my guest today has a saying: the best things in life are on the other side of difficult conversations. And today, he's going to tell you how to get to that other side. My guest is Kwame Christian. He's a best-selling author, attorney, and the founder and CEO of the American Negotiation Institute. He's also the host of Negotiate Anything, which is the #1 negotiation podcast in the world, with over 15 million downloads in over 180 countries. And if the word negotiation makes you think of boardrooms or buying cars, he's going to expand your definition, because Kwame's work is about something much more personal. It's about transforming how you relate to other people and how you relate to yourself when things get hard. Like me, Kwame's a LinkedIn learning instructor, and he's deeply passionate about helping people build better relationships. And I believe part of what's made his work so massively successful is how deeply personal his mission is. Kwame grew up as a shy, conflict-avoidant kid, and as a first-generation Caribbean American and the child of Ghanaian immigrants, he learned early on that the way to navigate the pain of not fitting in was to become a people pleaser. And everything he teaches now was shaped by his own learning about the difference between being liked and being respected. In this episode, we talk about why conflict isn't a threat to connection, but it is a test of it. And we explore what most people misunderstand about tough conversations. And Kwame breaks down his signature 3-step method for approaching conflict with empathy and clarity. And you're going to be able to start using this tool immediately to navigate your next hard conversation with more grace and groundedness. So, if you're tired of avoiding or stuffing what you know needs to be said, or if you're craving more honesty and more respect, and not just from others, but from yourself, Kwame has the simple, actionable mindset shifts and tools for you to use. Kwame, hello.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jay.
This is a treat. I was just saying to you, I think I've been on your podcast now 3 times, so it's about damn time that that the seats have switched.
Yes, and it feels good.
It does. I'm going to try and be as kind and generous as you've been to me as a host. You have a lot more experience than I do with this, though. You have, what, 1,600 episodes?
1,600. It's a number that sounds cartoonish at
It
this
does.
point.
But they're every day, right? That's how you get to that number.
Yes. And then next week, we're going to pull back to something more reasonable. So we're going to go 2 days a week. That
Oh
was,
my gosh.
yeah, so now I can have a life again.
Oh, good for you. That sounds really good. So you are a negotiation expert, which means that you have created a whole career around helping people have hard conversations. And I was thinking about it this morning. I went for a walk and I was thinking about our conversation today. And I was like, people say that the #1 fear is public speaking. But I've never heard the fear of having a hard conversation or having to negotiate something as listed on that, but it's gotta be so high. And unlike public speaking, which someone could go through their whole life and avoid doing and still have a successful life, you can't go through life avoiding difficult conversations and still have a kind of quality life that you're looking for. So I want to start by seeing if you could speak to the person out there, because I know there's someone out there who's listening who has to have a hard talk and is scared, because it's scary. If you could talk to them about either their fear or maybe what it is that you think they might be misinterpreting about having a hard talk or conflict.
Yes. Oh, this is great. And I think first I want to say I empathize with the person out there who struggles with these conversations, because the reason I got into this was because I was a people pleaser for the majority of my life. And negotiation is what set me free. And one of the things that would help is shifting your perspective a little bit when it comes to these tough conversations. And the thing about fear is that it is a very crafty emotion. It manifests itself in different ways. And I think especially for people who are very self-aware and people who are deep thinkers, a lot of times our overthinking is just a sneaky manifestation of fear. It keeps us.
Overthinking?
Yes.
I don't overthink. I don't know anybody who overthinks things. What are you talking about, Kwame?
When I hear people complain about underthinking, I'm like, that sounds delightful.
Oh my God, sign me up. Give me whatever medicine I can take for that.
Right, right. It infects all of us. And so what I've found is that sometimes it's hard to get rid of fear, but it is sometimes easier to redirect it. So I've shifted from the fear of failure or the fear of rejection to the fear of regret. So instead of saying, I'm afraid of failing in this conversation, I'm afraid of them rejecting me, I'm going to say, I'm going to have this deathbed mentality. So in the future, when I'm sitting back looking at this moment, this very moment, would I regret not having this conversation? And if the answer is yes, then I have to have the conversation, because I say to myself, I'm playing for the guy in the future, the future version of me who does not now have the opportunity to have this conversation. I'm the only version of myself who can save myself from that future regret. And so by shifting from the fear of failure to the fear of regret, sometimes that's what can help to motivate you to have the conversation.
I love that. I can feel it in my gut. Like when I think of the fear of failure or the fear of being rejected, it's this very kind of up in my throat, chest tight. But when I think about the fear of regret, it's like low down in my belly, where it's like, I don't want to live that with that. Like I can, that I can completely understand how that would shift me. It would shift me into action in a different way.
For sure. And we also have to just acknowledge the fact that this is a deeply human experience, the fear that we have with these conversations. It's deeply rooted into our evolutionary psychology. The reason we are where we are today is because our ancestors had the fear of rejection. Because back in our tribal days, if you're booted from the group, you're dead. It's a death sentence. Rejection is a death sentence. And so we still carry that fear, and it feels like a death sentence, even though we live in a society where you will most likely not die if the person says no to your request. And that's the thing. Emotionally, we struggle. Our limbic system struggles to distinguish between a social threat and a physical threat. They'll manifest themselves in more or less the same way. So if you're afraid of dying or you're afraid of having a tough conversation, it might feel more or less the same. And the fear is real. And the pain of rejection registers like a true pain. It's I remember there was a study in the book that was talked about in the book Emotional First Aid, where they said there are studies that show that if you trigger social rejection, you can ease the pain with an analgesic. And that's not advertising like Tylenol when you feel sad. I'm not saying that, but it's just to show how palpable the discomfort is when you experience rejection. So it's not like this is illogical or is there something wrong with you? It's a deeply human experience, but we now have to kind of force our own intentional evolution because we're still operating with the same base operating system that we've been using for the last hundreds or thousands of years as humanity. But society has evolved, but our psychology hasn't. So we have to push ourselves to get better.
That's a really interesting way to think of it, as forcing our evolution to get, because this is deeply ingrained in our nervous systems, that this is a bigger threat than it actually is. And, I was thinking about you as someone who has built a career around this. And honestly, I have a ton of respect for your work. I have an incredible amount of admiration for the success that you've created in your career. And if I'm totally honest with you, Kwame, I also have this really sweet bit of empathy that I always hold when I think about you and your work. And the reason is because this is a fear that doesn't necessarily go away the more you practice it. You get better at it. You get better at becoming more evolved and not letting the fear drive you. But and this could be projection, this could be total projection, but I wonder what it's like for you. Does it still bring up fear to think about having a difficult conversation with someone?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the difference is the way that I think about it now. I mean, it's cognitive reappraisal at the end of the day. The bodily sensation is going to be the same. The story I tell about it is going to change. And I've gotten to this point where I essentially just kind of laugh at my psychology sometimes because it's laughably predictable. I think there's certain parts of humanity, at least for me, that don't necessarily change in terms of the emotional experience of it, but the way that I might appear from the outside looking in and the actions that I take and the outcomes that I have would be very different. But the emotional experience is more or less the same. For instance, like with imposter syndrome, I've recognized that as I've gotten a little bit more elevated in my career, it's gotten worse because when you're pushing harder, you're doing more new things, and then there are more eyes on you. So it's just more magnified. And when it comes to these tough conversations, I still feel it. Even if it's something like a little conversation with my wife, Whitney, or setting a boundary with a parent, or something simple, a mistake was made in my order and I need to now say something. But now the habit has changed, but the cue is still the same. Because when you think about the anatomy of a habit, we have the signal or the cue, we have the action, and then we have the reward at the end of the day. And so typically, if we have the habit of disengagement from these tough conversations, what it would be is we have the signal internally, which is fear, and then we avoid it, and then the reward is actually in that moment feeling comfort. We don't have that long-term mentality when it comes to habit creation. It's all short-term. So you have to change the habit anatomy here too. The cue is going to be the same. I still feel that exact same fear, but now it's a rule with myself that I say, oh man, if I feel the fear, it's kind of, I just say to myself, well, now I have to do it. That's my new thing. If I feel the fear, I'm going to do the thing that has created the fear, because it's more than just the conversation for me. It is getting in the habit of overcoming fears. So that's one of the key things for my sons. When I see something that they're afraid of that can't hurt them, now we have to go and kind of do that CBT route with a bit of exposure therapy. Okay, cool. I want you to get in the habit of overcoming fears. I don't care if you're afraid of worms as an adult. It doesn't really matter. But if you're afraid of worms now, the fear is not the problem. I need you to take this as an opportunity to overcome the fear and show you that there's still life on the other side. And then you start to get addicted to the feeling of overcoming the fear. So now I don't run away from the fear. I seek it out, because that's what leads to the expansion. So it's not just the conversation itself, it's the growth opportunity that comes from it.
Absolutely. But as you say that, the place I go in my head is there's got to be situations in which you could be hurt, though, right? Like, in the sense of maybe you have the hard conversation and it destroys a friendship. Maybe you have the hard conversation and, so saying overcome your fears of things that can't hurt you. But what about the things that could hurt you? Like if there's someone listening who's like, well, I'm scared to tell my parents that I don't want to come home for the holidays this year with my family because I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want to hurt their relationship with their grandchildren, whatever. Like when there does feel like there is real hurt that could come from a conversation, what do you say to that around like how you manage that or how you kind of heal yourself afterwards if that ends up being the case?
Absolutely. That's a great question, because with every action that we take, whether we take a risk or we don't, there will be consequences. Every decision comes with some level of collateral damage. We just have to calibrate what we're willing to accept. And in those situations, I think about it more in terms of identity creation more than outcome-oriented situations. So for me, there is more of a threat in not engaging in an activity that builds me into the person that I want to become than the actual consequence. And so here's an example. When it comes to difficult conversations within relationships, I think about these as relationship tests. I don't go into the conversation with the assumption that the relationship needs to be the outcome. Because if I do that, Jay, then I'm giving away all my power, because whether or not the relationship is maintained is not completely in my control. The other person still has agency and autonomy there too. So I want to focus stoically on the things that are within my control and then find acceptance in the things that are outside of my control. And so I'm going to use the identity of the person that I want to be, or the person that I aspire to be, as the guiding principle for the action. So let's use the example of not wanting to spend the holidays with your family in that case, right? It's like, I do not want to hurt my family. That's not the goal. And I also recognize that in this situation, damage will be done. If I say no to them, they will experience some negativity. They will feel that pain. If I go along and people please and minimize myself and my own needs, damage will be done. And it'll be me that has to own that.
Yeah.
So whichever outcome happens, there will be damage. So we can't let the damage be the only determinant here. And so we have to find a way to not just have the conversation, but also use it as an opportunity to not just build ourselves into the person that we want to become, but also recognize our points of fragility that need to be beefed up, because there's a part of us that needs something that's out of our control. And when you think about it from the perspective of Buddhism, desire being the root of all suffering, right? Or Stoicism, the focusing on the things that are within our control, we lead to more suffering by trying to focus on the things that are outside of our control. If I can start to identify the things that are leading to emotional damage that are outside of my control, then before the conversation happens, I can take the substantive maneuvers to try to minimize that damage so it doesn't hurt me as much, but also do the internal work to see whether or not I'm attaching myself to something that is inappropriate, that actually hurts me more than it helps me.
Gosh, you said so much in there that was so wise and so necessary. I mean, I still need to hear those things, and I've dedicated my life to hard conversations like you have. But the thing that you said in there that I want to go back to is that, and correct me if I'm saying this incorrectly, something to the effect of, that these conversations aren't about saving relationships or healing relationships all the time. Sometimes they're testing the relationship. Did I say that correct, or how would you say that?
Yeah, I think about conflict as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to solve problems, to learn to connect with people. If you challenge yourself in these conversations before, if you're feeling avoidant, to just say, this conversation is an opportunity to blank, you'll always find something. And I think that's very valuable, because we'll start to approach these conversations versus avoid them. And one of the opportunities is it's an opportunity to identify and remove malignant relationships with minimal damage. If I'm in this conversation and I'm there and I'm trying to set a boundary for my own mental health and well-being, and you have a problem with that and you shame me for that, we have to remember that a lot of times we don't have the conversation because we live in fear of the reaction. But we don't often realize that sometimes the reaction is the reason why the relationship needs to fundamentally change.
Yes. I say this all the time to the clients I'm working with, that this conversation might not go the way you would hope it would go, but it will be information for you. And one of the greatest pieces of information you will get from this conversation is how much room there is for you in this relationship. And if there's no room for you, I love your words, it's malignant. That's a powerful word. It's malignant. It's not healthy for you.
And that's the thing. I think about us as humans as we are the authors of our own life. And this isn't like main character syndrome where we're like, I'm the only person that matters. No, everybody else, they are too the authors of their own life.
Yeah.
And your job every day is to wake up and write the best chapter you possibly can. But you have a co-author, and the co-author is fate. Those are things that are not within your control. And fate will write things that you never wanted to see. And it's your job to to pick up your pen and write the best chapter you can as you try to close out the day. That's it. And sometimes you can write a beautiful chapter, but sometimes the chapter is messy and sloppy, but you do the best you can with it. Nobody wants to read a book where the main character wins all the time. That's not realistic in any story, and it's not going to be realistic in ours. And so we have to kind of treat life as a blank canvas, and we're the artist, but every once in a while there's some blotches on that canvas that we did not put there. But if we approach that with resistance, then we are spending crucial energy on things that are outside of our control that don't move us in the right direction. And so I think the conversations we have, the relationships that we have, they're not always going to be storybook, but it's our job to write the best story we can with what we have.
That's beautiful. I love that. And this theme keeps coming up in what you're saying, that you don't have control over everything. And there are a lot of things you do have control over. And so I hear in what you're saying that negotiating hard conversations, they're really about agency. Like you said, about being the author of your life and being willing to like take the blows that do hurt in the pursuit of going for what's meaningful to you and how you feel good about yourself.
Yes, exactly. It's about agency and identity creation with intentionality. Because a lot of times we sit back passively and let life happen to us instead of being proactive and happening to life. And the one of the biggest sources of joy and also pain it's going to be the quality of the relationships. When you think about that longitudinal study that Harvard put on what leads to happiness, it's the quality of our relationships. So as a result, our ability or inability to resolve conflict, wrestle with conflict, have these tough conversations is going to have a direct impact on the overall quality of our relationships, which will have a direct impact on the quality and length of our life. And so this is so central. But here's the thing, and this is a recent evolution for me, because for me as a people pleaser and having negotiation be the tool that helped me to overcome that was great. But it cannot be the only tool in your toolbox, because we have to recognize negotiation, conflict resolution, these are problem solving tools. But sometimes the problem isn't solved through working with the other person. So I was mentioning this earlier. As a leader, I was leading as a negotiator, not being a leader who uses negotiation skills. Right? This is a big distinction.
Get it.
So for me, being a negotiator, it's always put into my head, separate the people from the problem, separate the people from the problem. But what I've recognized is that sometimes the person is the problem, and you need to separate yourself from the person who is the problem, right?
Ding, 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 ding.
And give yourself permission to. And I was thinking, I've got this undergrad degree in psychology. I love to nerd out on this. I've got the negotiation chops. I'm very persuasive. So if I run into a difficult situation or a difficult person, I have the tools to not just fix the situation, but also fix the person. But again, what you're doing is you are giving away your power to the other side, because you're saying the only pathway to my own well-being and satisfaction is through this person and through this relationship. Then they own you. That's not a good place to be. And
You
so
feel
again,
trapped.
agency is so important, and we lose sight of that because we make the person the goal, the relationship the goal, but not bettering ourselves the goal. And that's a key mental distinction that we need to make, and it's going to shift the way that we approach these conversations.
I'm like, my brain's going in 7 directions right now, Kwame, because there's so many things I want to say about that. But what it made me think of is how often someone I'm working with will say, I don't want to have this conversation because I don't think the other person can have it. I don't think they want to. They don't have a growth mindset. They fear that if they bring it up with this person, there's going to be a blow up. There's going to be shaming. There's going to be blaming. And this is kind of back to that thing of like, well, how much space is there for you in this relationship if that's the case? But what would you say to the person out there who thinks that like, I can't have this conversation because I don't think the other person will be willing to have it?
A couple of things. that's an assumption. That might be a manifestation of fear that's holding you back. So I would challenge that, because the first difficult conversation we have to have is with ourselves. And a lot of the things that we tell ourselves is BS. So we have to challenge that within
That is a true
ourselves.
statement.
Right? So that's the first thing. And let's assume that there is evidence that the person might not handle the conversation well. Well, I think there are a couple of things to keep in mind, because it's not just the person, it's also the relationships surrounding the person too. And if you just decide to either cut off the person without a conversation, or just let this situation fester and try to solve the problem yourself without giving them a chance, then you create a scenario where you make it very easy for them to paint you as the bad guy without giving any effort. Because now they could always say, I would have been able to be responsible and reasonable in my response. So don't make it that easy for them. That's one thing. And so I think
That's
for
good.
us, we need to be led with curiosity. It's not just driving toward an outcome. My whole thing is about learning and understanding the situation. And so I want to not just give them an opportunity to explain themselves and be part of the solution. I'm also giving myself an opportunity to learn and gather vital information. And that's notice the way that I said this too. I am giving them the opportunity to be part of the solution. I do not need you for this solution. I will find a solution, because like I said, negotiation is a problem solving tool, one of many that we have. So whenever I have these conversations now, I'm very intentional about saying, I don't need you for this. I'm not going to say that explicitly, I'll say it softer, right? It's like, I'm experiencing this challenge, and it's having this type of impact on me, and you're a part of this as well. You have a role to play in this. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to be part of the solution. And so when people push back and they say, I don't want to do this, I shouldn't have to do this, and they have that reaction that we're afraid of, instead of saying, no, you need to, my response has become different. I say, listen, I cannot control you, and you have the right to do whatever you want to do. And I wanted to let you know that this is a problem for me, and I will find a solution. I'm giving you an opportunity here to be part of that. And if you don't want to be a part of that, that is completely okay. And so now what happens, Jay? The dynamic shifts. I'm not giving away my power and leverage by making my only conduit to success through this person. Now they're saying, what does that mean? You're going to solve this problem? I know I'm part of this problem. How are you going to solve me? And I'm not going to be part of it. Now they say, now they're leaning in. They're saying, hold up. Wait. No, now I'm back to the table.
You need me.
Now,
That's what.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so now, instead of pacing people and trying to push them to do what you want them to do, now if they respond in that way, and instead of you saying, no, come back, which is the typical pattern, now you just say, hey, that's okay. If you don't want to, that's fine. I'll find a solution. I just wanted to give you a chance. And then now they're coming back to you.
I just want to side note here to the listener, because I'm curious what you felt in your body when you heard Kwame say that. Like, that's okay, I'll find a solution. Because what I felt in my body, as I imagine saying that myself, is I have come back to being behind my own eyes. I can feel my feet on the ground. I'm in myself, as opposed to any other manipulation that I might be doing that feels like I'm like reaching out, that energetic reaching, or that energetic off balanceness. So I'm just wanting to point out to you, listener, like, feel in your body what the way Kwame is speaking, how that lands in you. Because it's very much, I mean, this is what agency feels like. Agency feels like you are behind your own eyes, and you are not in any way needing to plug into someone else's force field to be okay.
Exactly. And let's focus on that word, be okay. Because for me, when I think about confidence, there are different ways that we can define it and express it and things like that. But at the end of the day, for me, when it comes to these conflicts and these tough conversations, confidence for me is just believing deep down inside that no matter what happens, I will find a way to be okay. That's it. I don't need to feel great. I don't need to feel amazing. I just need to know that no matter what happens, I will find a way to be okay. And I think if we zoom out and use sterile negotiation terms and then zoom back in, it'll start to make more sense. Because if we're in a business negotiation and let's say there's a client here and the client's being ridiculous, and You're saying, oh, I need this client. I want this client because they offer this, they offer that. It gives me some level of prestige and all this stuff. Then what's happening there is when you do an analysis of need within a negotiation, that gives you power and leverage. That gives the other side power and leverage. A classic way to determine who has the power and leverage in a negotiation is just simply asking who needs the deal more. And that person loses. Why is that? And the reason is because that person will feel the need and feel compelled to give up more things, make more concessions, make more adjustments. And the other person, since they don't need it, they're not going to feel the need to make commensurate adjustments too, right? If you need me and I don't need you, then you need to give your side of the bargain. You need to make it super sweet for me to be interested, right?
Right.
So here, in negotiation terms, what we need to do is we need to understand our BATNA, which is our best alternative to a negotiated agreement. It's our plan B. And sometimes the best way to get negotiation confidence is not to negotiate with the deal that you really want. Negotiate with your plan B and make that plan B as good as possible, because you say to yourself now when you're negotiating with plan A, you say, I'm okay, regardless of the way this ends up. And now your deal needs to be better because I know I already have something good. Now let's bring this back to our everyday conversations. Once I recognize friction or a problem or a challenge, before I even think about addressing it with that person, I'm not going to catastrophize to the point where it extends the conversation out, where I'm using it to delay inappropriately. I often give myself a shot clock. I say, okay, there's a timer. I'm going to have this conversation within 24 hours, but in that time, I'm going to think about what my alternatives will be. So I'm going to assume that this conversation goes terribly. And my goal is to make sure that every potential bad outcome that could happen, I've got an off-ramp. I'm good no matter what. It might not be the best solution, but I know that I will find a way to be okay. So when the person acts ridiculous and everything like that, I'm not getting inflamed or emotional because I don't see it as a threat, because I've already gone through these thought processes and I know that I have an alternative. So it's not just about how you have the conversation with the other person, it's how you build yourself up to be strong enough to withstand whatever outcome could possibly happen.
Which means you have to face your fears. If you think I'm going to have this conversation and these are the 5 things that I think could go really bad and would be really scary for me, most people, myself included, oftentimes will go first into that overthinking of like, no, like, how can I mitigate that? I'm not even going to look. I'm just going to focus on strategy. And if I don't look, it's not real. But what I hear you saying is like, if you turn and you address each one of those fears and say, okay, so I have this conversation and this happens. That could be real. What do I do? And then you turn to the next one and you really address it and you let yourself feel it, that those fears are no longer kind of looming. You've looked them right in the eye and you've got a plan for it.
Exactly. So I consider this part of my internal negotiation. It's a focused catastrophizing process. So I just say, all right, cool. I'm going to set the timer for, let's say, 10 minutes. Great. Write down every fear. Be afraid. Be very afraid. Show me how creative you can get with your fear.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that you write these things, just write it down. The writing of it is important. So you write these things down and then you get to 8 things. And then you realize I can't even think of a 9th one that's realistic. I guess I could consider meteors and earthquakes, but that wouldn't be very productive. And then you realize the list of possible alternatives and outcomes, it's not even that long. Great. Okay. So if each of those things happen, what's the off ramp? And then you realize typically, if I don't go through this focused catastrophizing process, what ends up happening is I just catastrophize and it just turns into endless rumination. And I just cycle through these 8 things for eternity. Right? Eternity. And then I realized this was a silly little exercise. If my brain wants to be afraid, I'll let it be afraid for a little bit, but we'll set parameters on that fear. Yeah. And then it makes it really easy, because now at this point where I've gotten to this point where I've said, all right, cool, I see the potential bad outcomes and now I know what I'm going to do. Now I can really, with confidence, focus on strategizing, because I know I've already handled the worst case scenario. Now I can focus on driving with intentionality toward the best case scenario.
Yeah, so good. These are all such useful tools. And I want to ask you about your main tool that you use with people, though.
Yes.
This 3 steps to, is it compassionate curiosity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So this is fun for me because it's for me, I recognized a couple of things that were challenges in the negotiation industry or difficult conversation industry. We've been giving recipes to people who are afraid to get in the kitchen. Right. We
They're
don't,
going to get fast food no matter how good the
no matter
recipe.
what, right? Because think about it. Because it's not a situation where people need more tactics or better tactics or anything like that. The tactics are not really the problem. It is our inability to put the tactics into practice. That's the
Yeah.
problem. You think about
Yeah.
shower comebacks. Imagine you're in a tough conversation and then you freeze up and then you're taking a shower later in the night. You're like, oh my God, why
I
didn't I
know
just
what I should
say
have
it?
said.
Right? It was in you. You just didn't have
Yeah.
it when it mattered. So 2 quotes, and then I'll give you the framework. Quote number 1, Leonardo da Vinci said, "Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication." So it took me years to get it this simple because I wanted to make it as simple as possible without making it simplistic. Because under duress, with a lot of cognitive load, you're not going to be able to remember a whole bunch of complex tactics. So we had to keep it simple. And then the next one is Bruce Lee. He says, "I don't fear the man who knows 10,000 kicks. I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times."
Oh,
And compassionate curiosity is your nonviolent, compassionate kick. So
10,000 kicks.
so it's never a question of whether or not it applies. It's just a question of how. And so it's been designed for the internal and external negotiation, same 3 steps. So first, we're going to recognize that there is usually an emotional element to this conflict. So step 1 is acknowledge and validate emotions. And then we're going to realize negotiation is an information game. So step 2 is get curious with compassion. And then step 3 is working with the other side, not against them, to solve the problem. And then internally, it's the exact same thing. If I'm feeling very emotional, I'm going to label my own emotions, acknowledge and validate them. Number 2, I'm going to get curious with self-directed compassion to understand why I'm feeling this way. And then I'm going to figure out what do I actually need to do next. So psychologically, we understand step 1 is name it to tame it. The
Yeah.
amygdala is firing. We activate the frontal lobe by labeling the emotions. We gather information so we could figure out what it is that the person needs, what the situation needs, and why. So we could use empathetic persuasion, where we're actually making persuasive arguments based on what the person needs and their own perspective, rather than egocentric persuasion, where we're saying, what is persuasive to me? And then I'm going to regurgitate that and assume you're the exact same as me, right? And then we're going to avoid the resistance that comes with trying to push people in certain directions, because a lot of times the more we push, the more resistance we feel. So it's
Sure.
not me versus you, it's you and me versus the problem as we work together in step 3.
That's so great. Could we play that out in an
Yes.
imaginary situation?
And listeners, we have not planned this, but if you want to channel the fears of your audience and come at me in a ridiculously aggressive way, I can just show you how compassionate curiosity could flow in a random situation.
Okay. So let's see. One thing that comes to mind that I've had come up with different clients is feeling like they have a quote unquote friend who isn't very kind to them. You know, who kind of makes fun of them. They've known each other forever and ever, but the relationship doesn't feel good anymore because the person is in this situation is starting to grow more self-respect, and you're realizing I don't really like how I feel around this person because they make fun of me a lot.
Ooh, this is good. And listeners, just for the record, I started to feel that in my chest. I started to feel that stress come up. So we just want to disclaim that to let you know, Kwame might appear as super cool, calm, and collected, but it's about being able to feel the storm and still navigate it through, because I started to feel that deep inside of me. Goodness.
Yeah.
Yes. Cool. Okay. So here's how we can start this, because usually in a lot of these conversations, the other side is blissfully unaware of the fact that there is an issue. So
True.
one of the toughest parts is the fact that you're the person who often has to start the conversation. It doesn't start organically. So I like that there's another simple 3-step approach that I use: situation, impact, invitation. to lead into the conversation. So situation, we're going to describe the situation using what I call naked facts. So these are facts that are stripped of all interpretation, judgment, or opinion. So no matter what you believe, you could say, yes, that's what happened. Impact, we're going to talk about the impact, personalize it to us. So I'm not going to talk about it globally because that introduces resistance. They can counter that. And now we have an argument before the conversation even begins. So I'm going to focus on the impact as it relates to me. And then invitation, I don't want to ambush them, but I don't want to give them an opportunity to not have the conversation at all. So when's a good time, now or later? So Jay, my mean friend, what I would say to you is, hey, so Jay, last night when we were out with our friends, you made a joke about me and everybody laughed. And I wanted to have a conversation with you because that made me really uncomfortable. And you're somebody that I value and respect. So I wanted to have a conversation with you about it to see what we can do going forward.
Are you kidding me? We were just joking around. We don't have to have a conversation about this.
And I respect that from your perspective, it was joking around. And I don't believe that you meant anything malicious by it. And at the same time, your experience differs from me because even though it didn't have an impact on you that was negative, it did have an impact on me that was negative.
Yeah, but like you said, I didn't intend that. So, no hard feelings.
Well, and again, I respect the fact that there are no hard feelings on your side. And for me, there are hard feelings. And I guess this is a good place for us to start because what I'm hearing from you is that if you did not feel any pain from the situation, it's okay. And it sounds like you're completely okay with me feeling pain under the same circumstances. Am I getting that right?
Well, you've made fun of me before and it's hurt.
Can you?
I just sorry, that's me I'm like playing the worst friend ever here.
You're good. So quick little aside for the listeners. So this is a wee bit of gaslighting. We want to get specific on this. So a lot of times people will try to absolve themselves of responsibility by deflecting and not addressing the situation. So I'm going to address it briefly, then I'm going to refocus on those situations. So this is what I'll do. So I'll say, oh, can you tell me about an example of that?
Well, a couple weeks ago when we were all at that barbecue and you were making fun of my job and like how basically you're kind of putting me in my place that I'm not as successful and cool as you.
Oh, what? Well, first of all, I want to apologize. I didn't realize that it had that negative impact on you. If I would have recognized that, I certainly wouldn't have done that. And so it sounds like for you, what I said caused harm, and I didn't recognize that. I apologize. And I want you to know too, just for the sake of our friendship, if there's ever a time in the future where I say something that hurts you, you always have the right to bring it up to me, and I will do my best to adjust. And honestly, that's what I'm hoping that we can do in this situation. Because like I said, I'm not saying that you did this on purpose or you did it with malicious intent. And that's why I'm bringing it up to you. So this isn't an accusation. I'm just bringing awareness so you can make a decision on how you want to approach it in the future next time.
Well, cool. Thanks. That feels good to hear.
Yeah, and that's it. It doesn't need to be anything more than that. But I just wanted to make sure that I had this conversation with you because and to be a little bit vulnerable here, I recognize that there have been times in the past where you and other people have said things that were hurtful, not necessarily malicious, but it was hurtful for me, and I didn't do a good job of standing up for myself and letting you know. So going forward, I promise that I'm going to do a better job of letting you know when that happens so you can be a better friend. And I also want to let you know that you have the same ability to do the same with me. So if there's ever a time where I cross the line, feel free to let me know.
Thanks. I will.
Good. And
this
scene.
Okay, I know, and scene. Okay, so good. I was resisting the urge to just keep gaslighting you. Because I feel like that's what so many people come back saying, like, I try to have the conversation and they gaslight me and they just keep saying, well, you this or you that, or they deflect but you did what I would say is when the language I would use for what I saw you do so masterfully is you kept entering their reality and like kind of putting yourself on their side and being like, oh, I see how you would feel this way, or I understand that. And then you would come right back to you. There's this play where it's back and forth, energetically, in terms of care, in terms of awareness. And I would say that I would think that's what most of us don't do when we get freaked out, is we tend to focus only on ourselves and being heard, or focus only on them and what they need to change or do differently. And you do this really beautiful dance of like, hey, we're in this together. That's really what you just show. We're in this together.
That's it. And also too, disclaiming for the audience, my heart is still pounding. Like I am embarrassed at how fast my heart rate is right now. But I've learned to just recognize and just accept my humanity and just say, this is what humans tend to do. And unfortunately, I'm one of these animals. And as long as I inhabit this body, it will respond in ways that don't really work for me. And that's okay. I can still perform at a high level, even though I don't feel great.
I so appreciate you saying that, because I mean, I felt it on my side. Like I could feel myself ramping up and just wanting to be a hard wall for you, you know, like, cause I could get into that part of me that's like, well, you're not going to accuse me of doing something. So I so appreciate that you said that. What would you do for yourself if this was a real situation and you were walking away from it with your heart beating? How do you dispel that in you?
I think I just recognize that afterwards, and maybe this is something that I could work on, is doing a better kind of self-care after, like immediately after. But I think usually what I do, and this is kind of my version of self-care, I'm very competitive. And I have to make sure that I focus that competitive nature in positive directions. And so I would say to I would journal about it and be like, yeah, I had that conversation. I did it. I felt terrible during it, but I still did it because I'm a boss and that's what I do. Right. And so I like to just like relish the victory, because regardless of the outcome, I can still feel like a winner if I carry myself the right way.
If you like you when you walk away from it.
Exactly. And see, Jay, if we would have kept on pushing that, right, I would have made my point and I would have said, hey, listen, you said this, it made me feel bad, and so I want to let you know. And what I wouldn't have done is like, you need to treat me this way. You need to do. No, I have enough self-respect for me. I don't need yours, right? But what I'm doing is I'm recognizing that being in my presence, having a conversation with me, being my friend, it's a privilege, not a right. You could lose that. And so this is an audition, not just a conversation. And if the person starts to fail, it's not my job to save them. Right. And so I'm just going to gather that as data, and I'm going to say, this is interesting, because I'm telling them what happened. I'm telling them that what they did caused emotional distress, and they don't seem to care. That's an important data point. I'm not going to try to make somebody care. I'm going to log that and then move on, because the thing is, there is a limited amount of friendships that you can have at one time. And so if you've demonstrated yourself to not be a high quality friend, now I have an opportunity to replace you with somebody better. You know? And so I would have just said, hey, listen, I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm giving you that information. And if you want to proceed in this way, be my guest, and I'll make my adjustments. But I thought I wanted to let you know. And then one last thing too, is that I look at myself not as part of the conversation, but as the conversational leader. So if somebody's not listening, I say, this is unfortunate. They don't know how to listen. It's my job to show them how to listen. And then what ends up happening is they're more likely to listen, because listening is reciprocal. If I recognize that their ego is getting in the way and they're having trouble accepting responsibility, I'm like, that's unfortunate. Let me show you how that's done. So you said I did something bad in the past. I'm going to honor your experience, and I'm going to tell you I care about your experience, and I apologize, and I'm going to do better in the future. Hey, that's what you should do. Here's another opportunity. Right?
I just modeled for you beautifully. Yeah. Well, and what you said a little bit ago, Kwame, really hit me hard. And I want to come back to it. You said, I don't need your self-respect. I have enough for myself. Like, I don't need you to respect me. I have enough respect for myself. And this is what all of this hinges on. And it strikes me that it's self-respect is a little bit like trust. You don't get trust in something until you have blended your trust to see if you can right? Like
Yes.
if I say to you, I want you to house sit my cat, and I trust you to do that, I actually don't know if I can trust you until I get back from vacation and my cat's still alive. So I'm lending you my trust. And I feel like we're lending ourselves self-respect whenever we have a conversation like this, because we're saying, I don't know how this is going to go, but I respect myself enough to have it. And at the other end of this conversation, no matter what happens, I know that I will come out of it with more respect for myself because I had it. And it
Yes.
just builds and builds and builds from there.
Exactly. And that goes back to what I said at the beginning, the fear of failure versus the fear of regret, right? I
Yeah.
know that if I had a conversation that I was afraid of and it doesn't go well, I know at least I won't have that regret. I won't have that wondering what would have happened if I would have said it. I can look back on myself and be proud and respect myself more. So
Yeah.
when I have these conversations, I win every single time, not because I get what I want every time, but because I become who I want to be.
Yes, absolutely. I want to trap you into this conversation for a few more hours, but I'm not going to do that. It's just, you are so full of such useful, actionable, and like human advice. So thank you for that. But I do want to let you go. I have two final questions for you.
Yes.
One is, how can someone find out more about what you're up to and all of your offerings?
Yeah, so check out my website. By the time this comes out, it should be kwamechristian.com. And if not, negotiateanything.com would work. And I'm Kwame Christian on all the socials. So I try to flood the world with as much content as possible. The podcast, the social posts, everything. And then I do keynote speaking and trainings and things like that. So I am pretty easy to find online.
And it is all high quality work.
Thank
I
you.
can stand behind all of it. And so then my last question, this is a question that I ask all the guests who come on. And it is about, how do you stay with yourself, particularly around other people? And I'm really curious to hear your answer to this, because this is literally the work that you do on some levels. But do you have a practice or a ritual or something that you do that helps you stay anchored and with yourself in a difficult situation?
Yes, I become a bit of an anthropologist. So I'm not a participant in the conversation. I try to become an observer of the conversation. At the end of the day, what are humans? We're social primates. That's it. So I'm like, okay, so what do these primates want? This one wants this one. That's what's happening.
You and your pith helmet.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, oh, what's the status hierarchy? Oh, interesting. This one seems to be experiencing this emotions. So this one, the other one being me, should probably approach this. Oh, interesting. The body that I inhabit is experiencing this emotion. Fascinating. Where does that come from? Which emotions is it? It's because it's an emotional cocktail. It's not just one. It's multiple things.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, so how should I respond? So it's almost like becoming the observer, literally staying above the fray and just seeing what's happening. And that helps me to get a level of emotional detachment, so I can experience my emotions. Let me say it this way. I can observe my emotions without becoming identified with the emotions. I am not angry. I am a primate who at this moment is experiencing anger. And just that little bit of distance
Yeah.
helps me to just stay focused. And another thing too, this is a funny one that I got from somebody that I worked with before. They said, in these difficult conversations, what I do is I ask myself, what would Kwame say? And I said, damn, why don't I do that? That's what I say. When I'm really struggling, I say to myself, what would I tell somebody else to do under these circumstances? And the answer becomes really clear. And it's just the fact that you get clouded with your own emotionality
Yeah.
that holds you back from doing what needs to be done and saying what needs to be said when it needs to be said or done. And so these little tools that I do to just get a little bit of a detachment really helps me
Yeah.
to just stay present in the conversation.
Absolutely. That's in spiritual traditions, they talk about that as being the witness.
Yeah.
Like and it doesn't mean that you're going to stay detached from your emotions forever, because sometimes you're going to have to feel them and process them for sure. But in that moment, if you're going to speak clearly like a human being and not a primate, you're going to have to be the anthropologist. Yeah. And I just want to reflect back to you. I want a television show where where you are the anthropologist and you are like, we're seeing the scene and you're doing that like, okay, this one is clearly showing that they're feeling inferior, and like what you're doing in your own head, I could totally see a show where you're like teaching people this is what's actually happening, because we all are just animals trying to how did you say it earlier, push our evolution.
Yes, just advance our own evolution. And so, Jay, I'll break some news with you right here, right now. Yesterday, we signed with Simon Sinek. And he has a learning library, and he, instead of doing like course style like we did with LinkedIn Learning, he wants it to be more edutainment. And so the idea is getting improv actors to come at me with their hardest situations,
Yes!
and then after the fact, I'll break it down. So you just manifested it.
I'm psychic.
Yes.
Yes. That is freaking awesome. Congratulations on that opportunity. And congratulations to us for being able to watch this sometime in the future, because that's brilliant.
Thank you. Oh,
I'm so excited.
So exciting. That's one of my things, because this transition, this new era is going to be more media focused, because I love learning and development. You know it. I like doing this, and I want to extend my impact more. And I recognize that there is the people who listen to this show, like the people who actually want to engage in self-help and improving themselves, it's a very small subset of the population. And if
Sadly.
I can find a way, exactly. And if I can find a way to make this type of material addictive, just like toxic content is on social media, then I think that could be a cool contribution.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I'm going to have you back when that's coming out, because this is amazing. Thank you so much, Kwame. I really had so much fun, and I know that this is going to help people. And I just want to turn back to you, listener, and say, I hope you are coming away from this feeling as fired up as I am. And I want you to go for a walk, or turn the podcast off, keep doing whatever mindless activity you might be doing while you're doing this, and let yourself sit with, where is it that you aren't feeling seen? Where is it that you aren't feeling respected? Where is it that you feel like someone's maybe unknowingly stepping on your toes? And it's time that you have the conversation, and take Kwame's words and look for it. Instead of fearing what might happen, put yourself in your future self and say, what do you fear that you will regret if you don't have this conversation? Because you have some incredible tools that Kwame left you to work with. And I believe that you can have this conversation. And no matter how it goes, you're going to feel better about yourself for having it. And that's what this is about. This is about how I always end these episodes by reminding you that your insides matter, and the right people will meet you there. So stay with yourself. And thank you for being here, and I'll catch you next week. And thanks, Kwame. You're the best.
My pleasure.